$250 now, $500 bid now, $250 now, $500 now, $750 bid now, $1,000 now, $1,250 now, $250. And greetings. Welcome to the latest edition of the Mike McGavel Jones Show, live from Dallas, Texas at Lincoln Center, right off of the LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway. And welcome to another edition of our show. And good morning, Zach.
Good morning, Mr. Jones. How are you?
I am outstanding.
I'm going to be honest. It's a Monday morning. My camera footage makes it look like I'm sitting on the surface of the sun, so I don't think you can see it in the studio. But when you watch this back, you'll get a laugh. It's good. It's a good time. Yeah. Very hot in here.
It is. It is a bit warm.
Yeah.
It's a bit warm.
How was your weekend? What were you up to?
Well, you know, we did our normal Texans can auction, sold a couple hundred cars, and let me tell you, the weather was unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen that much rain at one. Well, not ever, but certainly in Dallas, you don't see rain like that. I mean, it was as they say, a gully washer, and you know, we had a full house, so that was nice. But it was kind of weird having that much rain, looking out the door and just seeing a small river running through. And so that was an exciting thing. And then pretty much I just hung out this weekend because it'd been a busy week. So did a little work from home and just kind of took it easy. Watched the Cowboys lose and the Green Bay Packers win.
In a word, the Cowboys lose. I don't know if you want to talk about this in the podcast, but I saw you were in D.C. at one point, right? When was that?
Yeah, I traveled to D.C. on Wednesday, and we had a reception. It was the National Auctioneers Association Day on the Hill, and so we had a reception with two of our congressmen, Billy Long from Springfield, Missouri, who's an auctioneer and in our Auctioneer Hall of Fame, and then Jeff Duncan from South Carolina. So he's an auctioneer as well, and I've known Jeff for a long time. So they had a reception for us. We had probably 100 auctioneers, plus or minus, and it was our day to hit the Capitol and visit with the various House members and senators, and that was on Wednesday, and then Thursday we actually hit the halls and. You know, I mean, I was going to a lot of different ones because I wasn't just going to Texas. You know, I did go to Kenny Marchant's office, and that's my representative here in Dallas. And then I had a chance to visit with Senator Cornyn, our senior senator from Texas.
Oh, wow.
He, of course, was front and center during the judicial hearing to approve the new justice. And that was kind of crazy because we met and we had a couple of things we wanted to talk about, which I met John before. And so the senator was gracious enough to pop out of the hearings, which is, you know, says a lot, the fact that he would do that for a couple of constituents. And so he came out, we did a photograph and shared some things. And then he went right back in and then went head to head against Cory Booker, which was pretty. You know, it was pretty much the subject of the day, I think.
Right.
That was the battle between the Republicans and the Democrats. And so, you know, we did that. And then House Member Emmer from Minnesota, I visited with him because I do work up there, and we have mutual friends and a constituent of his that I'm working with. So, yeah, it was a good trip. It was a fast trip. You know, I went in on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon by 5 o'clock I was back on another plane. So
you know, it's we've talked a little bit about the history of auctioning on this show, but there's something very stately in politics and in auctioning. I think that I guess they kind of come from the same place, right? Having just like a courtroom, you have a gavel that you bang, and you I like to think as an auctioneer you wear a suit. I don't even have to, but
it depends.
Yeah,
it depends. It depends on what you're selling. You know, you dress for the clientele. Mm-hmm. You know, the rule of thumb is you dress typically one step above the client that you're dealing with. So if you're doing a farm sale and you know you've got a bunch of farmers or ranchers, then you're going to look appropriate for that group of people, but at the same time, you're going to have starched jeans or Dockers, and you know you're going to have a pressed shirt, and you'll normally have a Western hat, boots, but you'll look the part. And then, of course, I do a lot of real estate and fundraising events, and so when you're doing real estate and fundraising, and then we're going to dress appropriately. And you know, my normal attire is kind of what I'm wearing now,
right?
Know. If I'm doing an industrial facility, we're probably not going to wear a sport coat. We're probably going to wear matching logoed wear for the company. and try to get the team to match. We've got an auction coming up in Wyoming of heavy equipment. It's a big one. It's probably $10 million worth of heavy equipment. I'll be the auctioneer. And it's a new company that's just starting. It's a friend of mine, and he's asked me to be the auctioneer and oversee it. And so they've already told us to get them the sizes that they need so they can order the appropriate ware. So it's about look and feel. As far as the gavel goes, I think there is a respect that is given to a judge on the bench or the auctioneer in the block, so to speak. And so the decision is final. And I also believe that, especially in those circumstances, if you want to be looked at as a professional, then you need to act professional, look professional, and then wield the power. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of what it is. It's wielding the control of the room and the people that you're dealing with.
Well, it can't be easy to learn how to control a room like that. Some people can, some people can't. And I'm curious to think, with a couple weeks to go up until, I think, the kickoff of the next Auction Academy, right? Am I getting that wrong?
Yeah. This is pretty much what we're going to talk about during this podcast. Is going to be America's Auction Academy, a little bit of the history, and also what we're going to be doing in the class. It starts September the 21st through the 28th. It's an 8-day course. Starts on a Friday, ends on a Friday. It's traditionally this time of year that we do this particular class. It's going to usually be around September. So yeah, it's coming up pretty quick. So we're less than 2 weeks away, and so we're finalizing our class roster, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Well, this wasn't always America's Auction Academy. At one point, it was Texas Auction Academy. And how long have you been doing this? Walk me back a little bit.
Okay, so the way this happened, in 1991, I was at the National Auctioneers Association Conference and Show, which at that time was called convention. It wasn't conference and show. It was a convention, had been the convention since, way back. And, due to circumstances and friends and connections here in Texas, we just started talking about maybe starting an auction school. It seemed like every week, Zach, somebody was calling my office saying, "Where can I go to auction school?" And I had gone to auction school in Missouri, and the thing about it, it made no sense for me to send people to Missouri when one of the largest states in the union had some of the greatest auctioneers. Plus, with the connections that we had with the National Auctioneer Association, we had friends in the business from other states, so we knew we could bring in instructors from neighboring states like Oklahoma and Arkansas and places like that. And so I came back from that conference and show, and that kind of started the process. And we got approved in the spring of '92, and then we had our first class in June of 1992. And it's funny because we only had the first class. We had 13 students, and 13 students for us was fine because we'd never conducted auction school before, so it was our first run. But we had 13 students. All of them were from Texas except for one. There was a young lady from Mississippi that was in the class.
Fish out of water.
Yeah, what's she doing here? And she was interesting. She was in the oil and gas business, and I don't even know how she found us, but she did. And so it was an interesting group of people. When you look at the history of the school, every class has character. And every class has, just like high school or anything else, or college or vocational school, everyone's got a story. And but anyway, I had recruited some folks, and so I had my mentor, Joe Small, which I've mentioned before on another podcast. He was the first one I went to, and we met at a restaurant called Barra Peretti, near North Park, across the street. It was an Italian restaurant, and he and I sat down, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about auction school? Would you be interested in being an instructor?" He said yes, and I said okay. So I got my first endorsement from one of the smartest guys that I knew. Yeah. And then I called Scott Swinson down in Austin, and Ronnie Garner in Waco, and Jack Ogle, who was at the time my father-in-law, and then B.L. Woolley from Little Rock, Arkansas, and Pat Long, who's a great auctioneer from Brady, Texas. And so that was the core group that were the instructors that started the school, and they all showed up the first day. We did a group picture, and so that was the kickoff, and and now it's gone to what it is today.
Well, that sounds diminutive, but what it is today is great. It's a great thing, right? I mean, you've been doing it for what, 26 years now, right? Coming up on 27.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have. And so, and you mentioned the name. So I had always planned to consider changing the name to something larger. You know, there was already some other big names, and we knew we love Texas. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a born and raised Texan and born and bred, and would fight at the Alamo if they gave me something to do it with. But the bottom line is we have become over 7 years a national and international school. So unlike the way it was when it was 13 and 12-1 as far as our ratio to out of state people, now it's about 50%, 60% out of state and out of country, and then the balance being Texas. So that ratio has changed, and now we've gone from normally 35 to 40 students. We've had as many as 45. We prefer to keep it under 40 just because of the ability to spend more time with the students and work with them one-on-one. And so, it's changed a lot. We have way more instructors than we had then. We probably have 13 or 14 instructors, and the quality of the school has increased. We've trained a lot of champion auctioneers, Denise Sharon from Maryland. She was the very first African-American international champion auctioneer.
Wow.
Which was an amazing thing to see. Wendy Lambert from here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area won the championship. And then Barrett Bray, who is the 2018-19
right.
champion.
That name rings a bell. Yeah.
So he is he's our new champion, and we've also added him as an instructor to the school. So he'll be here for our next class on the 21st. He won't be here on the 21st, but the week of the 21st through the 28th. So we're excited about adding him to the mix.
For those of us that don't know, it's not quite like a horse race. What makes an auctioneer a champion versus not a champion? What is that quality? Is there a contest? Is there how do you? Well,
there's multiple contests. When I say multiple, I don't mean there's a lot of prestigious contests, but there are a limited number. The International Auctioneer Championship is really considered the premier championship for the industry because it is the National Auctioneers Association sponsored contest. The LMA, the Livestock Marketing Association, for cattle, you have to qualify through your sale barn to participate in that one. Usually they sponsor you, I believe. And then the car auctioneers, they have a specific championship, the World Auto Auction Championship, which I've actually judged that contest. And so as far as the World Auto Auction Champions, we've trained two of those folks, actually three. Craig Meyer, who won the championship in Denver, and I just happened to be in Denver doing a St. Jude auction and got to be there to see him win. He came in 1998. We actually have two World Auto Auction champions that came out of our school in 1998, which is kind of odd. Trey Galloway from down at Belton, Texas, he was a World Auto Auction champion, and then Craig and his wife, Angie, who is an accomplished auctioneer, they won the team championship together. So we have that group there, and then we've trained a lot of state champions and just a lot of folks. There's a championship coming up here in Fort Worth in the next couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, called the Lone Star Auctioneer Championship, and we actually are a sponsor for that contest, and so we'll have a booth and we'll be supporting that. We were a sponsor last year as well, and so we're excited to participate again, and that was kind of created by the Texas Auctioneers Association.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about your kind of the school's like give and take, because it seems like an individual like you, it seems like you would be judging these things. It seems like you would get to know the people in these organizations, the World Car, the International. How's that gone down over time?
Well,
slowly shake hands and get to know people.
Well, I think the interesting thing is this, and this also helped build the school. I mean, in my career, by winning the international championship in 1998 in Oklahoma City, that kind of propelled me into the light. Okay, and so then because most of your states, almost all of them at that time, had an annual convention.
Yeah, and
so they were looking for speakers. The NAA would promote that, and I was asked to speak, I think, at 16 or 18 state conventions between 98 and 99.
A lot of states.
It's a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And it takes you away from your work. but my staff knew, and I told them, I said, you guys are going to have to hold down the fort. And so anyway, I got to speak at those conventions. People got to know who I was, and that's why you can't underestimate the value of winning a championship or even being in the room with other auctioneers, because what I've found is if you are competing in those championships and you're around great auctioneers, it propels you up. It's like golf. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like golf. If you play with good golfers, you're going to become a better golfer. Whether you ever become a great golfer or not, that's to be seen. But the fact is you had that opportunity because you're around people that play well. And it's like any other sport. You play better tennis players, you're going to be a better tennis player. And so anyway, by being in those contests, it took me 8 years to win the contest. Some people come in and win it the first year. And Barrett is a perfect example. Barrett had never been in a contest, and we'll talk about him another day, but bottom line is he came out of nowhere and just blew the people away. And these are super accomplished auctioneers. These are people who do auctions every week. They have regular sales. They practice every day through working, so it's interesting to see how people do. And it also, by being at all those states, that allowed me the opportunity to run for a directorship in the National Auctioneer Association. And then after 2 or 3 years of that, then I ran for vice president. And next thing you know, I was president and past president and chair. And I really believe that all happened because of the International Auctioneer Championship, because it gives you that exposure that you need. And because I was a first-generation auctioneer. And when you're a first generation, it's not like your dad was before and everybody knew him. And so, it's a little bit different. And so, it's kind of what you make out of it. And I also believe you have to be there.
Right.
You have to be there. And I know, in 96, my sister won the Women's International.
Oh, wow.
And I took third. This took place in San Diego. I took third, and I thought, hey, man, I'm just 2 steps away from being the next international champion. And then I go to Nashville the next year and didn't even make the top 10. And that was humbling. That gets you back down. And then, you have to decide if you've got the strength to say, well, I'm going to try it again after a disappointment. And then the next year I won. So you just and we've got a friend of ours, Butch Booker, from up in Washington State. And he's got more trophies than anybody from the IAC. He's probably got 16 trophies. And, he could have quit any time and said, you know what, it's not worth it. But he knew it was going to be worth it. And so he finally did win the championship. And he's a great auctioneer and probably should have won it before it took that long. But the reality is it's different every year. You have different judges every year. Judges perceive you differently, and you just have to work it.
Well, I think it's important to, I think it's fun to look at the championship, right? Look at the top and look at how successful people are once they get there. But we should talk about the journey to get up to the top, because you don't become a champion if you don't pay your dues, right? And learn the rule book cover to cover, and also inject a little bit of your own personal flair. You guys have been doing the Auction Academy for 26 years off the top of my head. You've had a lot of people come through, and something I want to ask about is how do you train a lot of different people to do the same kind of job, but in their own way? Because no auctioneer is the same as another. Everybody's different. How do you dilute that down? I guess?
And we stress that they not try to imitate somebody.
Right.
We don't want them. We're not trying to create clones. The chant is and the chant is what we call it. It's the bid call. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you saw this on the news, but on CBS Morning News and maybe on some of the other broadcasts, Congressman Long was being heckled during the hearings. And there was a woman in the back of the room, and she had her cell phone held up in the air, and she was screaming and yelling. And
as they do.
As they do, and which they've been doing a lot last week.
Yeah.
And Billy said, I can't hear her. And whether he could hear her or not, it was his time on the clock to talk to the candidate. And so he just went into a live auction chant. And it was a stunning moment. And it was referenced that he was an auctioneer and had been an auctioneer previously, but Billy kind of shut him down. He's got a big personality. He's not afraid to take somebody on, and What's interesting with auction school is we get a total variety of individuals. We get people who, I've had people show up that have never been to an auction. I've got people that go to an auction every week, gone to their cattle sales every week with their grandfather, gone to antique sales, and some have actually been auctioneers. I mean, we've had auctioneers who have had a career for various reasons. Maybe they want to work on their chant. We had someone from Ireland in the last class. He was an auctioneer. He was a real estate auctioneer and also raised sheep, and then wanted to change his chant, wanted to sound more American. And so he came over here, and I asked him, I said, where did you find us? And he said, through the internet. Just decided to come.
How anybody finds anything nowadays.
Yeah. So anyway, that was cool. So anyway, we get these people there. We get everybody to introduce themselves, tell us who they are, where they're from, what they've been doing, what they want to do, why are they here. And some people aren't sure. Some people just, we had a gentleman from Allen, Texas. He'd been a dentist for 40 years, decided to retire, and all he did was go to schools. And so he came to auction school. He ended up working some fundraisers with us. But his name is E.T. Boone. And today, if you go to Allen, there's an elementary school named after E.T. Boone.
Really?
Yep. Very successful gentleman and very well thought of. And so you never know who's going to show up at. I've had comedians show up at auction school. I've had truck drivers. I've had finance people, insurance people, folks that worked for NASA, actors. We've had a full spectrum. So what you have is you have the very shy, and then you have the very outgoing.
Sure.
And some of them are outlandish. What you also see are nervous habits. People that are trying to overcompensate for being nervous. You got some people that are hyperventilating, and which we try to get them put them to ease as quickly as we possibly can, because we're teaching them a lot of things from the very beginning. We're teaching them how to hold their hands, how to interact with the people, how they should dress. We're talking about smiling. We're talking about being able to show your numbers with your fingers, how to interact with your bid spotters, your professional ringmen, how to interact with your staff, how to talk in a clear, concise manner, how to have the rhythm. If you take all the things that we do, I literally on day 3 or 4, I do an assessment, a progress report. And the progress report is basically the same grid that we use for the international contest. So we're grading you just like if you were in a contest on a national level.
All right, this is going to sound like a very surface question, but hear me out. We had on another show we do, we had a man in that is a musician from Australia, country music from Australia. And the funny thing is, when an Australian man, specifically this one, sings, particularly in a way that most people find pleasant, I guess, or I could even say for somebody like a 70s British rock band, when people who aren't necessarily from America sing, their voice starts to get to a place where you lose the accent a little bit. And so I'm curious, in auction chants, is that a thing? Like your man from Ireland that you'd mentioned earlier, does he start to sound like he's not from Ireland? Or how do you stretch around people from international waters, I guess? How do you take something that's so old and kind of help it breathe?
Yeah, I don't think you can remove that in 8 days.
Yeah. Not easily anyway.
No,
yeah.
No. Our friend from Ireland it was he and his daughter. Their accents were solid, and he still sounded like an Irishman. Yeah. Doing a chant, and it was hard for him. It was a challenge to change what he'd been doing because they don't do it the same there, and in some countries they kind of do it backwards. The Dutch go backwards. They don't go down and back and all that stuff. They start high and come down until somebody bids. So that's called a Dutch auction.
Really?
Yeah, it's the first hand up wins.
Huh.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah,
that is interesting.
Yeah, like they have in Holland they have the flower auctions. The tulips and all that stuff. That's exactly how that works. They start high and go down. And so so if you're coming here to learn an American style, then you're taking on something unique. The Chinese, one of the best students I ever had one year, number 1 student in the class, best class scorer. Took the test the first Monday afterwards, passed, barely could speak English. But she learned the chant. but they do things different in China than they do here,
Right.
and in the same thing in Southeast Asia. They just have a different style, and they don't do a chant like we do. So they're, I was actually invited to open a school in China years ago. It was just too much of an undertaking, too much of a time commitment, and it would have interrupted with everything that I was doing. But I would love to have done it, but it didn't make sense at the time. I had hosted the Chinese here in the United States back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they had brought people from all of the different provinces. And in China, it's a huge honor to be an auctioneer.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the position. The government decides if you can be an auctioneer. And when you see one of their conventions, it looks like the state conferences that you would see for a delegate. I mean, I'm talking about for an ambassador. The stages are extravagant. It's like nothing. You'll never see that here in the United States. We're much more laid back and easygoing, and those people are very stately, and they just take a different approach to it.
Well, I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, and I had two more questions that I wanted to get to.
Yep.
First, I wanted to ask, my parents are teachers, school teachers, not quite auction teachers, but I've always had this kind of idea that in every classroom setting, there's a little bit of a give and a little bit of a take. While you are teaching others something, in some way there's things you learn yourself. So in the 26 years that the Auction Academy has been around, and in the future to come, along with taking international students from other places, what are some ways you guys have expanded and changed to meet a changing demographic?
Well, I think you have to be cognizant of where they're from. I think you have to be more patient, because people, and even today, people are a lot more sensitive. I think when I went to auction school, the auctioneers that were teaching were borderline rude. Not all of them, but I mean one or two. I mean, it only takes one to put a woman in tears.
Yeah.
Or make a man so mad he wants to fight you.
Oh yeah.
And that's the way it was when I went to auction school. We don't approach it that way. Our deal is, look, this is a voluntary deal. If now I'm going to be very honest with them. I'm not going to.
That's how you teach.
I'm not going to puff them up to make them feel good. I'm going to say, look, I'm here to make you good. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to make you good. And so I expect people to be serious, and sometimes with some of the younger people coming out of high school and college, they're kind of goofy.
Well, they think they're invincible,
because they're young,
yeah.
and so they'll be kind of silly, because that's an easy way to cover up being nervous. I understand that, especially if they come with a friend. You get 2 or 3 friends together, and they're there to have a good time, no matter what they're doing. But I think the big thing is patience, and I think you just have to give them their due, and have to pay better attention to the foreigners. When you've got somebody from South Africa in here, they have certain terminologies, and sometimes it takes them a little bit longer to grip what we're doing.
You can lose things in translation.
Let me tell you, when we have the people from Nigeria and Africa in here, and we seem to have at least 1 or 2 in every class now, it is challenging, even to understand some of their words. You just have to learn to deal with it. So when you come to auction school, you're going to we're going to do tongue twisters. We're going to do the number drills, and it's an 80-hour course, probably 83 hours altogether. We're going to teach them a little bit about every type of auction that's out there, and it ranges from equine and horse sales to antique sales to farm equipment sales to real estate sales, automobiles. We'll talk about oil and gas, and I think one of the big differences today is it's technology based. So much of what we do requires computers and software, and more assets than what it took when I got in the auction business. When I got in the auction business, you had a speaker system, you had a solar calculator, and some clerking sheets, and pen and paper, and and a clerking box, and that was pretty much it. Your total investment was under $500, or surely under $1,000 to get started.
Kids
not
these
like
days.
that anymore.
Well, I wanted to ask, you did bring in one thing I want to make sure we get to before the end of the show, because we've only got a few minutes left.
Okay.
Let's talk about this for a minute. What is this you've brought in?
What do you mean?
The photo.
Oh,
yeah.
That is the first class, and I just came across that over the weekend. I thought, I'm just going to take that, and so you can see what our first class looked like, It's a good looking group of people, and they dressed up, and we did want them to dress for the picture. The instructors from left to the center, those are your instructors, and then on the right hand side, the rest of our instructors. And the only one out of that entire group who is still with us as far as an instructor goes is going to be on the far left, Scott Swinson from Austin, Texas. And so he's now in the Texas Auctioneer Hall of Fame. He's served on the National Auctioneer Association Board of Directors, great auctioneer, and one of my best friends. And then, of course, Joe Small is the fourth from the left, and he's the tall guy. And he's in assisted living now, and he's in his 80s, so he's in his latter years. But and he wouldn't have quit if he physically could have kept on going. He would have kept on going forever. But a lot of people in Dallas know Joe.
To pivot off of that, and of course to underline where it came from and where we're going, we also have a photo of last year's, I should say.
Actually, this year.
Auction Academy class.
June.
This is this year.
Yeah, this was just a couple of months ago. Yeah, that is our first actually branded America's Auction Academy class, June of 2018, and I can't tell you how many are in the picture, but it's not 13.
Definitely more. Yeah. You can kind of bounce between them and see that there are more than a few.
Well, you can see that we have really raised the standard for what our photographs look like, our expectations of what our classes appear to be. When we print these in magazines and in the National Auctioneer magazine, we've actually created a step up for all the auction schools. They've all had to kind of increase their profile and look and feel, and I think we've been good for the industry, and the industry's been really good to us. And also just a shout out to all of our students because we raised a lot of money for St. Jude, and we raised a lot of money for Texas Scottish Rite Children's Hospital. And I think I just received some notices from both of them that the funds we've been raising for them, we're well over $250,000 to $300,000 each, wow. And that all came from our students and from our instructors and from our staff and from the owners. So, well,
one thing that surprises me, right before we move on to the end here, I did want to say I'm surprised to see that in the old 1992 photo. No hat wear. In the new one, 11 cowboy hats. I don't know how that happened from 92 to 2018, but that is something else.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is interesting.
You'd think in 92 they'd be all cowboy hats.
You would think, but you know what? There's a very distinct possibility that in 1992 I asked them not to wear their cowboy hat.
It's a good point. I didn't think about that. That might be a reason.
And now I give them an option. If they want to wear their hat, we just put them up on the top row so they're not blinding anybody or blocking anybody, because it's hard to get everybody in those pictures.
Yeah,
so we can see them.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem because I wear cowboy hats all the time, especially when I'm doing certain events, and at the during our individual photographs, I give the cowboy hat guys, anybody that wants to I have them take one with the hat and one without the hat, because a lot of these folks are going to use that picture to promote themselves.
Yeah.
And in different venues, you need to fit the circumstance and the situation. So
right.
we're training them to deal with the elements and the people that they work with.
If somebody wants to find out more about the Auction Academy, they want to get involved, they want to maybe enroll, where do they go?
If you want to enroll for the next class, go to www.americas, and that's AS, americasauctionacademy.com. You can also leave a message in our office at 972-387-4200. And if someone has a specific question and they need to speak to me directly, I don't have a problem taking a call. But all the information you're really looking for is on the website. But if they decide they want to give me a personal call, it's 214-906-5265. I'll be happy to answer the question. It's one of the few schools that you can go to for under $2,000 and pay for it the first time you do a decent size auction. You can get your money back. So
yeah, that's a sweet deal.
It's a pretty sweet deal. It certainly is. And we actually have the classes in Louisville. Of course, we're branded Dallas. It's Dallas-Fort Worth, really, but we're only about 10 minutes from DFW Airport and about 15 to 20 from Love Field. So and with Uber, you can get anywhere now. So
yes.
it's very handy. Lots of restaurants. We actually stay in the building where we have the classes. The hotel is right there. We have a special rate for them. So if they're interested, we've got a few seats left for this September class, which is the 21st through the 28th. And we're the only school running 8 days right now because we've decided that, if we can get them in on a Friday and out on a Friday, it makes it easier for them, and they're only away from home one weekend. And they seem to like that a lot.
It makes a difference.
Yep.
Well, any closing thoughts before we close off here? Do you want to say how people can get a hold of you? I know outside of your phone number, your office. What do people need to know?
Well, I've got. You can also get a hold of me through my email, which is mjonesauctioneer@gmail.com. That's mjonesauctioneer@gmail.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I'm not in the physical office nearly as much as a lot of people are because I'm on an airplane most of the time.
You're a busy guy.
Yeah, but if they'd like to get together, they can call me or send me an email, and I'll be happy to line something up. And I will be I'm at the auction school every day. I'll be, I may have to leave a few times. I know I've got a function or two where I have to fly out to Kansas City during the class, but I do kick off every class in the morning, and people think I'm just in there maybe 1 or 2 days, but I'm not. I'm there Friday to Friday. Yeah. So they're going to have to deal with me.
They're going to have to deal with you.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, once again, thanks for joining me or thanks for letting me join you, I should say, on the show. The show's got your name on it, so yeah.
Well, we enjoy working with you, Zach, and of course I'm a big fan of Real PR and Jeff and the team and the crew, and people just need to know that y'all are professionals, and I appreciate that very much. So,
likewise.
On behalf of everybody here at the Mike McGavel Jones Show here in Dallas, Texas, at Lincoln Center, we bid you adieu, and we'll see you next time.